Oh man, I'm really psyched for this one. Coming up, we're uncovering the backstories behind the greatest movie themes of the 1980s. Songs that have become pop culture phenomenons. And some of these stories are just insane. Now, one theme was recorded in the cramped bathroom of an airplane at 30,000 feet. And the former 80s rock frontman turned composer had to run back to the lavatory every time inspiration struck with the next part. He actually recorded part of it in there. Another classic adventure score actually started as two separate pieces of music, but they were both so damn good, the director made him stitch the two songs into one unforgettable track. And then there was a song that was so moving, it made a famous director cry like a baby the first time he heard it. And then he actually recut his film to match the flow of the music. We're telling these stories and so many more. Stick around as we count them down next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you ever stood in line for hours around the block to see a blockbuster movie back in the day, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the white button. Click the notification bell so you know when our stuff comes out. Also, check us out at professorofrock.com. Sign up there. So, you know, before CGI, before franchise fatigue, and before every blockbuster needed a post-credits scene, there was the movie theme. And in the 80s, themes were an essential part of every film. A great theme was the heartbeat of the movie, and the second you heard it, you were locked in. Today's countdown, we're celebrating 11 unforgettable movie themes from the 1980s that have become fixtures in pop culture history. For the purposes of this countdown, we're just focusing in on film scores or film themes, which means that we're saving, you know, like the Ghostbusters song and Footloose for another episode.
Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! Footloose, kick off the Sunday shoes.
Stick around because some of these stories behind these songs and scores are some of the best I've ever heard, truly. So kicking off our countdown at number 11, I'm going with a theme that every 80s kid knows by heart. Axel F from Beverly Hills Cop. You know, when Beverly Hills Cop exploded into theaters in 1984, it turned Eddie Murphy into a full-blown movie star. It gave the world one of the most iconic synth tracks of the decade. Composed by German composer Harold Faltermeyer, Axel F, with its infectious bouncing synth line, it captured the mischievous, quick-witted sass of Eddie Murphy's character. I mean, it was cool, it was catchy, and it was tailor-made for the neon decade. Faltermeyer approached Beverly Hills Cop with a simple mission. He wanted to give Axel Foley a musical identity. So using a Roland Jupiter 8 synthesizer, a Yamaha DX7, and a Lindrum machine, he crafted Axel F in just a few sessions. Now, originally, the film's producers wanted a more traditional score, but when they heard Axel F's synth-driven groove, they knew it was perfect. Who wouldn't? Said Faltermeyer about it, the idea was to have a theme that was very simple, but, you know, to stick in your mind. I never thought it would become so big, though. Now, you can catch Axel F playing throughout the movie. It really works to reinforce Axel's charm, his resourcefulness, and his rebellious nature, turning a simple fish-out-of-water story into something just a lot more fun. As Axel weaves through high-end boutiques, and luxury hotels and stuffy country clubs, Faltermeyer's music acts like his personal soundtrack. You know, it's smooth, it's confident, always mischievous. The theme went on to become a breakout hit on its own. Released as a single, Axel F climbed all the way to number 3 on the Hot 100 in 1985 and became a global hit. And one that every 80s kid learned on the piano, you know, took piano lessons. Been sampled, remixed, parodied so many different times, but the original version still stands tall, instantly evoking palm trees, fast cars, and Eddie Murphy's great laugh.
Let's go, Mike.
So coming in at number 10, I've got the score from the Goonies. specifically focusing on the opening piece, the Fratelli Chase. I mean, when it comes to the Goonies, the adventure begins right out of the gate. We're immediately thrown into a thrilling jailbreak masterminded by the Fratelli crime family. And of course, underneath all of that is the Fratelli Chase, a wild and breathless piece of music composed by Dave Grusin. Fast-paced and packed with tension, it really sets the tone for everything that follows. Now, Dave Grusin, who'd already made a name for himself scoring films like 3 Days of the Condor and Tootsie, he's the one that wrote the music for It Might Be You. He was an unconventional choice for the Goonies. Steven Spielberg and director Richard Donner wanted a score that balanced action and humor, keeping the film fun even when the stakes were high. Grusin's background in jazz and his knack for lively, detailed compositions turned out to be a perfect fit for the film. Fratelli Chase starts with pounding drums and quick darting strings, mimicking the frantic movements of the Fratellis as they flee jail. Fratelli Chase, it later gets used during scenes involving the Fratellis, tying the villains to their musical signature. Every time the Fratellis show up, Grusin echoes snippets of the theme, reminding us that trouble is lurking. Becomes kind of a comic villain motif throughout the film, blending menace with slapstick so well. Which is why it was so maddening that the complete orchestral score wasn't officially released until 2010. 25 years after the film's debut. Over the years, it's become a nostalgic trigger for fans, instantly transporting them back to a time of booby traps, treasure maps, and bike rides through coastal cliffs. When you hear it, not just watching a chase, you're like a Goonie living it. And they might have another Goonies coming out. Next up, it's a Karate Kid theme at number 9. When the Karate Kid hit theaters in '84, it was an instant underdog classic. The story of Daniel LaRusso, scrappy New Jersey kid learning to stand up for himself in a new town, resonated with all of us. While the pop-centric soundtrack would give us classics like Cruel Summer and You're the Best. Right from the jump, composer Bill Conti, he shaped the film's musical identity with a theme rooted in perseverance, honor, and heart. His main title theme sets the tone for the movie as it plays over Daniel's journey from Newark to Reseda, a literal and metaphorical road trip into the unknown. Best known for composing the triumphant theme for Rocky in 1976, Bill Conti approached the Karate Kid with a lighter touch. He blended traditional Western orchestration with Eastern elements, like Japanese woodwinds and bells. That's to reflect Mr. Miyagi's influence in Daniel's journey into karate. Conti's score starts with a plain of almost mournful melody, hinting at Daniel's uncertainty. But as the credits roll and Daniel's battered station wagon heads westward, the music, it shifts into a more hopeful, adventurous tone. Bill Conti's work on The Karate Kid wasn't about delivering a flashy fight soundtrack. It was really about storytelling, telling that emotional story. And his main title theme helped turn a simple coming-of-age film into a timeless underdog saga, giving the world a musical rallying cry for anyone who's ever had to stand up, dig deep, and really believe in themselves.
Hey, Mr. Miyagi! We did it! We did it! All right! Woo!
So we made it to number 8 on the countdown, and for this one, I gotta go with the main title from David Lynch's Dune. In In 1984, Dune hit theaters with David Lynch at the helm, and while opinions on the movie's execution have always been split, few could argue about the brilliance of its soundtrack, which was crafted by Toto. Yeah, Toto, best known for African Rosanna and one of the greatest bands out there. It was an unexpected pairing, but one that gave Dune a sound unlike anything else at the time. Lynch needed music that could convey the epic scale of Frank Herbert's novel, while also tapping into the strange mystical feeling of the desert planet at the story's core. Toto was eager for the challenge and spent months developing an entirely new sonic palette. It combined synthesizers and full orchestral arrangements and electric guitars into a massive sand-swept wall of sound. The title theme plays during the film's opening credits, and it's an incredible soundtrack. While Lynch's Dune was considered a box office disappointment, Toto's scores remained a cult favorite. Even the director of the new Dune, the 2021 version, cited Toto's soundtrack as an important influence into his own reimagining of the film.
What's to become of our world?
So ramping up to number 7, it's the moving theme from Chariots of Fire. When Chariots of Fire was released in 1981, it was a small character-driven film about British runners preparing for the 1924 Olympics. Not the sort of movie you'd expect to feature one of the most recognizable themes in history. Greek composer Vangelis delivered a piece of music that truly transcended the film. The Chariots of Fire theme, with its serene, slow-building synth melody, became a global phenomenon. Even people who have never seen the movie instantly recognize this song, no matter what their age. The theme makes its most famous appearance during the movie's iconic opening sequence. It's just mesmerizing. The slow-motion montage of the British runners training barefoot along a windswept beach. The contrast between the vintage setting and the modern synthesizer gave the scene an otherworldly quality, really, think about it. The producers were very skeptical. It might be a disaster to use synthesizers in a period piece, right? But when they matched it to the beach scene, they were stunned. Director Hugh Hudson initially considered using traditional period music, to match the film's 1920 setting, but he wanted the story to feel timeless, more about the human spirit than historical accuracy. Hudson admired Vangelis' work on earlier films, thought it was lush, his emotive style, it was a perfect fit. Vangelis composed the main theme early in production, working largely alone in his London studio with his Yamaha CS80 synthesizer. What made Vangelis' composition so powerful was its simplicity and its purity, right? His minimalistic approach allowed listeners to project their own emotions onto the music, making it feel deeply personal, even without words. As Vangelis once said, "I tried to compose an anthem to human willpower." Chariots of Fire theme was released as a single, and it quickly took on a life of its own. It went to number 1 on the Hot 100 in 1982, and it won the Academy Award for Best Original Score. It's become a cultural shorthand for victory and perseverance, frequently parodied, featured in commercials and used during Olympic broadcasts, all of that. Can anyone remember the Mr. Bean hilarious slow motion spoof, or when Mr. Mom kind of ripped it off? Gotta end with Vangelis' quote, rest in peace. He said, "I tried to capture the feeling of triumph and the struggle to achieve something greater than yourself. It had to be timeless, like running toward a dream." All right, coming in at number 6 from one of the greatest sequels of all time, I've got the Imperial March from The Empire Strikes Back. You know, by the time The Empire Strikes Back arrived in 1980, the world was already in love with John Williams' original Star Wars score, that's for sure. How do you compete with one of the most iconic film compositions of all time? Wouldn't you just reuse the music, right? It's kind of an impossible task to try to be better. Not for John Williams. Empire demanded something darker, though. So to meet the moment, Williams composed the Imperial March, Darth Vader's theme, a new musical motif that captured the might of the Galactic Empire. Of course, built on a minor key and using a militaristic rhythm, the Imperial March created a sense of unstoppable dread, right? I mean, the march's heavy brass and pounding percussion instantly signaled danger and dominance and power. It is the perfect embodiment of Darth Vader and the overwhelming force of the Empire. Said John Williams about it, and I quote, "The Imperial March had to have the feeling of a military band, something that would suggest the dark power of Darth Vader without overplaying it. I wanted it to be recognizable immediately, like a national anthem for evil. I love that." Surprisingly, the Imperial March doesn't play the very first time we see Darth Vader in The Empire Strikes Back. If you go back and look, you can see it actually debuts a few scenes later in spectacular fashion during a grand fleet reveal where Vader stands aboard the Executor, overseeing its massive armada. The theme's swelling introduction underscores the scale of the Empire's threat, signaling that the stakes are even higher than they were in A New Hope. In a brilliant bit of musical storytelling, the Imperial March acts as a dark counterpart to Luke's more hopeful, adventurous theme introduced in the original Star Wars. As The Empire Strikes Back paints a bleaker, more complicated galaxy, Williams' new composition mirrored that tonal shift. It deepened the emotional complexity of the saga and gave the villains the grandeur and the menace that they deserved, really. Even decades later, you can't hear those opening notes without feeling a bit of a chill. Today, the Imperial March is arguably the most famous villain theme in cinematic history. Its ominous, unavoidable rhythm taps into a primal fear of looming, right? Unstoppable authority. Truly, few pieces of film music have achieved that kind of universal recognition, that the Imperial March enjoys. All right, we've reached number 5, and we're going back to back with John Williams, the flying theme from E.T. the Extraterrestrial. When E.T. hit theaters in '82, it wasn't just Steven Spielberg's storytelling that thrilled audiences. It was also John Williams' soaring, heart-tugging score. And at the heart of it was the flying theme, a musical piece so exhilarating that it practically lifted audiences out of their seats. Williams approached E.T. with a goal of writing a score that would capture the innocence and the wonder of childhood. Now, early on, Spielberg told him the music needed to feel like it was about children, not science fiction. So John Williams composed the flying theme by focusing on the emotional connection between Elliot and E.T., and it was perfect. He created a melody that was simple, easy to hum, but layered with complex orchestral swells, giving it cinematic grandeur for sure. Said Spielberg, "John's music for E.T. made me cry the first time I heard it. I realized he'd captured the heart of the movie even better than I had." The flying theme makes its iconic debut during one of the film's most magical sequences, when Elliot and E.T. riding a bicycle fly across the night right in front of a glowing full moon. The theme returns later in the film during the boys' climactic, bike riding escape from the government agents, but that that scene with the moon perfect. One of the most famous behind-the-scenes stories on this one is that Spielberg ended up editing the bike flight scene to match Williams' music perfectly. Normally, a composer scores a scene after it's been locked in the edit, but Spielberg was so moved by Williams' composition that he recut the film to match the flow of the music.
Don't crash, please.
The flying theme quickly became inseparable from E.T., of course, helped Williams win the Oscar for Best Original Score, one of many. All right, we're getting closer to the top spot. Coming in at number 4, I've got the score that ruled 1989, Danny Elfman's Batman theme. When Tim Burton's Batman hit theaters in 1989, it changed the way superhero movies were perceived forever. While Prince took charge of the soundtrack, which included the number 1 Bat Dance, it was the Oingo Boingo frontman Danny Elfman who gave us the unforgettable score. From the first ominous notes of Danny Elfman's opening theme, audiences knew they were in for something darker and grittier than anything the genre had ever seen at that point. The Batman theme was an instant classic, one of the most definitive pieces of superhero music ever written. Take it to the press. The origin story of the Batman theme, it's almost as chaotic as Gotham City itself. Danny Elfman later recalled that he came up with the core melody while he was on an airplane, flying back to LA after visiting the Batman set in London. I love this story. This is what Elfman said exactly, and I quote, "I was on a plane thinking about the movie, and suddenly the Batman theme, it just came into my head. I was so panicked I wouldn't remember it. Elfman, he became so desperate to capture the idea before it faded that he ran to the airplane's cramped bathroom and began humming and recording the theme on a handheld tape recorder. And then after capturing it, he returned to his seat. But then inspiration continued to strike throughout the flight. And so every 10 minutes or so, he was like, I would run back to the lavatory to capture that next part. The composer no doubt got some look from other passengers as he repeatedly ran up and down the aisle, for more bathroom recording sessions. Fortunately, that process worked perfectly, and Elfman was able to get the essential parts recorded. Now, you first hear the full swell of Elfman's theme during the opening title sequence, a moody, sweeping camera journey through the Batman logo hidden in shadow. It's definitely the perfect introduction to Burton's Gotham. It immediately signals that this Batman, it's not the campy 60s Adam West version. This one's dangerous. Elfman said he saw Batman as a tragic character and shaped the theme to reflect both his strength and his loneliness. Now, throughout the film, the theme recurs at pivotal moments: when Batman first appears, when he saves Vicky Vale, when the Batmobile roars through Gotham streets. So cool. Best Batmobile for sure. The Batman theme became the sound of Batman for a generation. Elfman's score was adapted and expanded for the beloved Batman the Animated Series, bringing, his dark operatic sound to Saturday morning cartoons. And later films, including Batman Returns, continued to use the theme. Even today, Elfman's Batman theme remains one of the towering achievements of film music. It really paved the way for darker, more sophisticated superhero soundtracks long before Hans Zimmer, his brooding scores for the Dark Knight trilogy.
A watchful protector. A dark knight.
It became an essential part of the mythos. And to think it all started in a lavatory 30,000 feet in the air, bathroom. Top 3 were a challenge, I'm telling you. But in at number 3, gotta go with the Top Gun theme by Steve Stevens, Billy Idol's guitarist, and Harold Faltermeyer making another appearance here. You know, Kenny Loggins may have lit the afterburners with Danger Zone, and Berlin captured the romance with Take My Breath Away. But Harold Faltermeyer and Steve Stevens hit emotional gold with the Top Gun anthem. You know, when audiences first watched Top Gun hit movie screens in 1986, they weren't just dazzled by fighter jets and aviator sunglasses. They were pulled into the movie's adrenaline-fueled world by its opening anthem for sure. This instrumental power ballad set the tone for everything that followed. It was pure cinematic liftoff. The Top Gun anthem, it's first heard over the movie's opening montage, a sequence showing Navy jets launching from the deck of an aircraft carrier. It's slow and majestic, capturing the precision and the pride of the Top Gun pilots. The origins of the Top Gun anthem were surprisingly humble. Harold Faltermeyer, fresh off his success of Axel F from Beverly Hills Cop, he was tasked with creating a theme that would capture the spirit of Top Gun. You know, equal parts swagger and camaraderie. Faltermeyer began layering simple synthesizer patterns designed to emulate the feel of military machinery starting up. But it wasn't until Faltermeyer brought in Billy Idol's guitarist Steve Stevens as when the Top Gun anthem really took flight. Stevens' searing emotional guitar lines gave the song its heart for sure. Here's what Steve Stevens told me about that.
He said, yeah, I've got this theme and I'd like you to play guitar on it. He said, maybe we'll do it over the weekend after the Billy Idol session. So we finished the session, I think it was about 10 p.m. and then they put the multi-track tape on and he had the melody and it was all written. And so it was another one of those very quick sessions. We got the melodies together. What was really good was that all my gear was set up already. So I already had a great guitar sound. I didn't have to spend any time with the engineer or anything. It was just a matter of capturing the melody and everything. And then we did the solo. I kind of forgot about it, because it was at the end of the day, it was just a 2-hour session or whatever. And then, by Monday, we're back into doing Whiplash Smile. And then Harold moved on, he finished his keyboards. And I think he was only with us for about a week. And then he sent me this is the days of telegrams or something. The premiere is going to be in New York. Would you come to the premiere? Oh, premiere, sure. I'd never been into a film premiere. Wow, this is a big deal. This is a big movie.
All right, so at the runner-up position, The Bridesmaid Space, it's one of my personal favorites. For my personal favorite blockbuster of all time, I've got the theme from Back to the Future by Alan Silvestri. In 1985, Back to the Future became an instant phenomenon, blending science fiction, humor, and heart in a way that very few films had ever done. The magic wasn't just in the DeLorean or the performances of the actors. It was in the music. Composer Alan Silvestri crafted an orchestral theme that instantly captured the spirit of the film. Grand adventure and heart-pounding suspense. Ironically, Silvestri's first attempt at scoring the film had been much smaller in scale, but director Robert Zemeckis wanted bigger, and Silvestri definitely delivered. The Back to the Future theme was built like a traditional heroic fanfare. Silvestri combined brass-heavy orchestration with sweeping melodies, giving Marty McFly's personal journey the grandeur of a mythic odyssey. The chorus first appears in this scene. And later it returns when lightning strikes the Hill Valley Clock Tower, sending the DeLorean and Marty hurtling back to 1985. Man, Silvestri's theme became the musical spine of the trilogy. It was, of course, used in Back to the Future Part 2 and Part 3 with variations to match new settings, whether the futuristic Hill Valley of 2015 or the dusty old West of 1885. In Part 3, Silvestri even adapted the theme with banjos and harmonicas for a rustic feel. Now, at the time, Back to the Future wasn't expected to become a blockbuster at all, and Silvestri was still relatively unknown. Yet the result was one of the most instantly recognizable themes of the 80s after you heard it, giving Marty's story a daring, hopeful sound that felt larger than life and definitely inseparable from the film's identity. Just a classic. Okay, so before I reveal my number one pick, I gotta tip my hat to a couple honorable mentions. First, there's the Right Stuff theme. For this one, Bill Conti crafted a sweeping patriotic score that captured the spirit of America's early space program. Beautifully done. And second, it's another Vangelis entry, the main titles from Blade Runner. His haunting synth-heavy score gave Ridley Scott's dystopian vision a soul, blurring the lines between the organic and the artificial. And I also got to give a shout out to Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Ah, love it. So here we are at number one, and of course, it has to be John Williams, making his third appearance on the countdown. From Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's the Raiders March. In 1981, John Williams composed the Raiders March for Steven Spielberg's Raiders of the Lost Ark, crafting a musical emblem for the adventurous archaeologist known as Indiana Jones. Williams presented two distinct pieces to Spielberg, but he found merit in both. According to John Williams, Steven said, I want a piece that will be like a fanfare, almost a ceremonial march for Indiana Jones. I wrote two pieces, and Steven blurted out, I love them both. So we just put them together. The Raiders March is characterized by its bold brass fanfare and a rhythmic drive, reflecting Indy's courage and his tenacity. Within Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Raiders March is strategically employed to underscore pivotal moments. First resonated during Indy's South American escape, setting the tone for his adventurous pursuits right from there. Man, it just grabs you by the throat. The theme recurs throughout the film, notably during action sequences and the closing credits, reinforcing Indy's heroism and the film's adventurous spirit. The theme's prominence extends beyond the original film, though, recurring in subsequent installments like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and The Last Crusade, and the other two. But even more than that, the Raiders March has transcended its cinematic origins. I mean, it's become synonymous with adventure and heroism in popular culture for sure. Its influence is evident in various media, from parodies to tributes. Decades after its debut, the Raiders March continues to be celebrated for its dynamic composition and its role in defining the Indiana Jones character. For my money, the greatest character in film history. John Williams' masterful integration of thematic elements has solidified the piece as a quintessential example of film scoring. Film Scoring 101. Well, there you have it. Those are my picks. What are your picks? What is your top 10 or top 5 scores? What are your memories of these films, of these songs, of these scores? Just brilliant. Let's have a great celebration and a great time in the comments section below. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Would you like to see the 70s? Would you like to see the 60s, maybe the 90s? Let me know. Until next time, records and the truth, my friends.